At 2:13 a.m. on July 1st, 2024 in Busan, South Korea, a horrifying sound shattered the quiet night air. In a high-rise apartment building in Busanjin district, a 24-year-old woman fell from her bedroom window. 10 minutes later, an emergency call rang at the police station. The caller was Kim Dao-hwan, the victim's boyfriend. After receiving the report, police immediately rushed to the location specified by the caller. Since it was early morning, the streets were empty, with only the caller having witnessed the incident. Police investigation was quickly launched. The caller identified the victim as Lee Min-jong, his girlfriend, who fell from the building. She was rushed to the hospital but ultimately could not be saved. Kim stated that before the incident occurred, he and his girlfriend Min-jong had argued over trivial matters. In anger, he left their residence. Unexpectedly, just as he went downstairs, he heard the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. When he turned around, he discovered it was his girlfriend Min-jong. Lee Min-jong was 24 years old this year, known by everyone around her for her cheerful and energetic personality. She had just received the good news about being granted student visa status to study in Australia, planning to depart in May of the following year. Whenever she shared her future plans, Min-jong's eyes would light up with longing and hope for a new life. This is precisely why many people found it suspicious that a young woman so passionate about life would choose to end her life in such a manner. The first information that undermined Kim's testimony came from people who knew the couple. They revealed to police an important detail. Min-jong and Kim had actually broken up previously. This immediately raised major questions among investigators about the motive and truthfulness of Kim's statement. Recognizing the complexity of the case, police decided to retrieve security camera footage from the surrounding area. What they found completely overturned the initial testimony. Although the camera was positioned at a relatively far distance and the images weren't completely clear, through the large window of the apartment, investigators could still distinguish two figures in the room. The footage showed that before the tragedy occurred, Min-jong was not alone. Beside her was a man with a build very similar to Kim's. The two appeared to be having an intense conversation, with their gestures and body language showing tension. But the most suspicious detail lay in the mysterious time gap. The camera recorded Min-jong's fall at 2:13 a.m., while Kim's emergency call was only made 10 minutes later, at 2:23 a.m. This 10-minute silence became a major question that Kim couldn't explain. Under pressure from undeniable evidence, Kim was forced to adjust his testimony. He admitted to being present beside Min-jong when she fell, but insisted it was just an unexpected accident that occurred while they were talking. This sudden change in testimony made him even more suspicious in the public eye. When these details were revealed, public opinion began to stir with countless questions about the young woman's death. To understand the complete picture of this tragedy, we need to go back 9 months earlier, when everything began. In March 2023, Busan was still immersed in the cold of late winter. It was during this time that Min-jong's life turned a new page when she happily announced to everyone her new boyfriend, Kim Dao-hwan, a 24-year-old man. Though only 1 year older than Min-jong, Kim appeared mature and attractive. What initially connected the two were long conversations about shared interests, creating a feeling as if they had understood each other for a long time. With her gentle and open personality, Min-jong was always loved by everyone. Therefore, when people learned she had a boyfriend, everyone felt happy for her. No one could have suspected that this sweetly beginning relationship would become the start of a series of horrifying days waiting ahead. However, that sweet mask couldn't hide forever. As their feelings grew closer, Kim's true nature began to emerge, a person with pathological control needs and extreme jealousy. What initially appeared to be caring gradually became chains that suffocated Min-jong's life. Every detail of her daily life had to be reported and permission requested. From checking bank transaction details to daily video calls to inspect her clothing. Kim even demanded that Min-jong film around the house to prove no one else was there. Every time she went out to meet friends or go shopping, she had to send photos as proof, including shopping receipts. Not only that, Even during sweltering summer days, Min Jeong had to wear long clothes to hide marks on her body. Any non-compliance led to serious consequences. The peak of this control was when Kim seized her social media accounts, using Min Jeong's identity to send rude messages to friends, isolating her from all social relationships. During long, sleepless nights, Min Jeong constantly thought about escaping this toxic relationship. However, every time she tried to mention breaking up, Kim would explode in fury, causing her to suffer painful consequences both physically and mentally. The growing fear gradually extinguished her will to free herself, replaced by a desire to seek legal intervention. In September 2023, Min Jeong finally gathered enough courage to walk into a police station to report what she was enduring. Kim's attitude upon learning this could only be described with two words: arrogant and contemptuous. He showed no concern, even boasting about powerful family connections. His father was a lawyer, his uncle was a police officer. In Kim's eyes, these relationships served as a protective shield, helping him escape any legal troubles. He even refused to cooperate with police in the investigation. Faced with his arrogance and threats of revenge, Min Jeong felt powerless and afraid. Eventually, she was forced to withdraw her complaint, ending the investigation in silence. But instead of showing any remorse, Kim became even worse. After discussing with her family in October of that year, Min Jeong once again gathered courage to report to police. However, after understanding the situation, police believed this case required both Min Jeong and Kim to be present for mediation. This requirement made the young woman even more frightened, ultimately changing her mind and being forced to withdraw the complaint again. Min Jeong continued trying to escape Kim's heavy shadow, yearning to return to normal life. But his desire for control didn't diminish. It became even more intense. Every time Min Jeong talked or had contact with anyone, it immediately became a trigger for Kim's fury. On a day in December, when Min Jeong simply arranged to have drinks with a close friend, Kim learned about it and went insane. Phone calls rang continuously, messages flooded in like waves, filled with interrogations and terrifying threats. In desperation, Min Jeong once again proposed breaking up. Immediately, Kim rushed straight to Min Jeong's door, pounding frantically. The loud noise tore through the quiet of the neighborhood in the late night. Facing this difficult situation and worried about disturbing neighbors, Min Jeong reluctantly had to open the door to let Kim in, hoping to calm the situation. Inside the small house, Kim completely lost control. His fury erupted into destructive actions. Belongings were thrown around. Min Jeong's peaceful living space became a battlefield. Worse still, Kim engaged in direct violence against her. The screaming and arguing grew louder until 1 a.m., when neighbors could no longer tolerate it and called police to intervene. Min Jeong, with her naturally gentle character, didn't want to make a big deal or pursue further action. When police arrived, they simply asked Kim to leave the apartment. However, what neither Min Jeong nor the police anticipated was Kim's terrifying stubbornness. He didn't leave as everyone thought. Right after police withdrew, Kim quietly returned and began a prolonged siege. From late night until 3 o'clock the next afternoon, for 13 haunting hours straight, he held his position outside the apartment like a haunting ghost. Door knocking, continuous doorbell ringing, and hundreds of messages, exactly 365 messages, all revolving around one content, demanding to meet. When the media reported on this incident, a wave of public outrage immediately erupted. Many people couldn't believe that someone could behave so extremely. However, Min Jeong officially announced the breakup, and this time she was determined to stand firm. In conversations with friends, her bright smile returned when she sighed with relief. Finally, it's over. This joy became even more complete when she received good news. Her application to study in Australia had been approved. Before her lay a completely new future, where she could escape the nightmare that had tortured her for so long. But what Min Jeong thought was the end was only the beginning of an even worse phase of psychological terrorism. In Kim's distorted world, the breakup meant nothing. He still considered Min Jeong his girlfriend, still believed they were in a relationship. Kim didn't just continue forcing Min Jeong to meet him. He also began sending messages with the nature of a will to mutual friends, declaring he would take extreme actions right at Min Jeong's house. These threats weren't just aimed at her, but also alarmed those around them. Min Jeong's life from then became a series of days of constant vigilance. Every time she came home, she needed someone to escort her to the door to ensure Kim wasn't lurking somewhere. On January 7th, 2024, exactly 9 days after the breakup, Min Jeong decided to give herself a rare, relaxing evening. She and a male friend went to a virtual baseball store around midnight. In the comfortable space with projection screens and modern touch equipment, both enjoyed the simple pleasure of the game. Those were precious moments when Min Jeong could temporarily forget the haunting thoughts about her ex-boyfriend. However, that peaceful moment didn't last long. While they were engrossed in the game, the door was suddenly pushed open violently. Kim appeared like a storm, his face full of fury, harsh questioning immediately tearing through the cheerful atmosphere in the room. Min Jeong was startled, her heart pounding rapidly. She completely didn't understand how Kim could know her location. Had he been following her from when? After a period of panic, Min Jeong was forced to stand up and step outside with Kim for a private conversation, perhaps hoping to avoid creating an awkward scene in front of her friend. The conversation outside lasted several minutes, but no one knew exactly what they said. The only clear thing was that when Min Jeong returned, she was like a person who had lost her soul. According to the male friend's account in later interviews, Min Jeong's face was pale at that time, her eyes vacant as if she had just witnessed something terrible. Clearly, that conversation had left a deep and frightening impact. At 2 a.m., the male friend decided to take Min Jeong home. He dropped her off downstairs, waved goodbye, and waited until he saw her safely enter the building before leaving with peace of mind. No one could have suspected that this familiar scene would be the last time they saw each other. When Min Jeong opened her apartment door, what she feared most had become reality. Kim was already there, hiding in the darkness of the house, patiently waiting for her return. What happened next was the tragedy we knew from the beginning of the story. The developments after the incident made people even more outraged. Due to insufficient legal evidence to directly charge Kim with causing Min Jeong's death, he was free to move around during the investigation process. What was even more infuriating was Kim's indifferent attitude. Not a single apology sent to the victim's family, and he was completely absent from Min Jeong's funeral. Min Jeong's family couldn't bear this coldness. They firmly believed that Kim couldn't escape responsibility for their daughter's death and continuously demanded that police take decisive action. However, after the investigation process, authorities accepted part of Kim's testimony and concluded this was just an unfortunate accident. The case was hastily closed. While Min Jeong's family was drowning in grief and despair, Kim lived a completely opposite life. He was comfortable being active on social media as if nothing had happened, frequently posting cheerful images of daily life. This contrast only increased the pain of Min Jeong's loved ones. Unable to remain silent about this injustice, 2 weeks after the tragedy, in January 2024, Min Jeong's aunt decided to speak up. She posted a long article on a Korean forum, publicly calling for the case to be reinvestigated and pleading for media intervention. The family's last hope was to mobilize the power of public opinion to demand justice for the young woman who died unjustly. In the touching post, Min Jeong's aunt exposed the entire cruel truth about her niece's life. She detailed the physical violence, Kim's illegal entry into the home, along with continuous stalking and harassment. Most terrifyingly, Kim had words and actions aimed at pushing Min Jeong to harm herself, a clear sign of psychological manipulation. In August 2023, when Min Jeong's beloved grandfather passed away, Min Jeong couldn't be present on the day of the funeral and was only allowed to come to the funeral home the next day. At that time, the aunt noticed her niece's hand was wrapped in gauze, a sign of injury. What pained her even more was that the first thing Min Jeong did when arriving at the funeral home wasn't to pay respects to her grandfather, but to take photos to send to Kim to report her location. Min Jeong's aunt also published some text message exchanges between her niece and Kim, filled with insults and humiliation from Kim's side. These messages clearly showed the level of cruelty in how Kim treated Min Jeong. She also pointed out clear contradictions in Kim's testimony, from initially saying he wasn't present at the scene, to admitting he was there but being unable to explain the 10-minute gap before calling police. All this evidence pointed to one conclusion: this was definitely not a simple accident. What made Min Jeong's aunt even more outraged was that Kim's actress sister seemed completely unaffected by her brother's behavior. She continued to appear comfortably on screen, continuing her acting career and enjoying a life of fame. For a family drowning in grief, seeing her image on television was like knives stabbing their hearts, a constant reminder of the injustice they had to endure. The post ended with the most touching lines, as the aunt shared about the last phone call with Min Jeong. She would never forget her niece's bright and happy voice at that time. Min Jeong joyfully announced she had officially broken up with Kim and excitedly talked about her plans to study in Australia. The future before her was like a brilliant painting, full of hope and aspiration. Yet shortly after, the young woman in the prime of her life passed away under mysterious circumstances, leaving her family in ultimate pain and unanswered questions. This post quickly spread and shocked public opinion. Netizens found information about Kim's sister, an actress who, while not overly famous, had participated in many beloved television dramas. This created division in the online community. One side believed Kim's actions weren't related to his family, but the other side condemned Kim's cold attitude for not showing remorse or apologizing to the victim's family. A famous Korean television program couldn't ignore this shocking case. Invited experts who participated in the analysis reached a strong conclusion: Kim couldn't escape responsibility for Min Jeong's death. According to their view, if Kim hadn't been present at the scene on that fateful night, this tragedy could have been completely avoided. When examining the entire picture, experts determined this wasn't an isolated incident or unexpected accident, but the inevitable consequence of a long process of psychological and physical abuse. Kim's continuous stalking, relentless harassment, and violence had created a chain of causes leading to this tragic outcome. According to family observations, this necklace wasn't simply broken due to an accident. They believed that before Min Jeong fell, a violent physical confrontation had occurred between her and Kim, during which the necklace broke due to being pulled forcefully. If this were true, it would be clear evidence showing violence occurred before Min Jeong fell. However, when asked about this detail, police offered a different explanation. They argued that with the speed and impact force when falling from such a height, the probability of the necklace breaking was over 90%. According to this logic, the necklace breaking was completely normal and couldn't be considered evidence of violence. Not satisfied with this hasty conclusion, the program team decided to seek independent opinions. They asked metal and physics experts to analyze the necklace. The results surprised many. The necklace had 2 different breakpoints. According to expert assessment, this type of breakage was more consistent with being pulled or struck forcefully from outside, rather than impact force from falling from height. Determined to find the truth, the program team continuously tried to contact Kim directly to hear his version of the story. However, all efforts were futile. Kim's phone seemed to sink into silence, with no calls being answered. Eventually, they could only approach him through his defense attorney. The lawyer admitted that Kim and Min Jeong had argued on the night the incident occurred, but insisted this had no direct connection to her fall. He even revealed a detail supposedly defending Kim. In a previous argument, Min Jeong had climbed onto the windowsill and put one leg outside. At that time, Kim had intervened to stop her, and during this process, marks were left on Min Jeong's leg. According to the lawyer, these marks were later misunderstood as evidence of abuse. The lawyer also made a legal argument that Kim's behavior could hardly be convicted as stalking and harassment in the strict legal sense. He argued that although some of Kim's actions might have been against Min Jeong's wishes, they were more like normal arguments and conflicts in romantic relationships rather than criminal behavior. According to this view, the severity wasn't enough to constitute stalking and harassment charges under legal definition. In the program, Min Jeong's family gave an emotional interview, not hiding their anger toward police's passive attitude. They emphasized a painful fact. Before the tragedy occurred, Min Jeong and neighbors had reported to police a total of 3 times. Almost every month there were police reports filed, showing the situation had escalated seriously and persistently. Yet throughout this process, police had no effective protective measures for the victim. Min Jeong's family expressed strong belief that if authorities had recognized the level of danger at that time and taken decisive action to protect her, the tragedy could have been completely avoided. The lack of effectiveness in intervention had become a contributing factor to the painful outcome. Faced with these criticisms, police offered explanations about their working procedures. They insisted that in all cases, the complainant's wishes were always prioritized. Specifically, in the first report, Min Jeong herself expressed unwillingness to continue prosecution. The second time, when police required both Min Jeong and Kim to come to the station for cooperative investigation, she refused, citing unwillingness to have any further involvement with Kim, and withdrew the complaint. From a legal procedural perspective, police argued that with the frequency of reports and the victim's inconsistent attitude, they didn't have sufficient legal basis to officially handle the case. In such situations, they also didn't have the authority to unilaterally apply coercive measures without the parties' consent. Police explanations quickly faced strong criticism from the legal community. Experts argued that in cases involving domestic violence and personal safety threats, authorities couldn't just passively wait for the victim's opinion. Instead, they had a responsibility to proactively assess risk levels and apply appropriate protective measures, even when victims were too afraid to continue reporting. According to this view, police's approach had inadvertently made the victim hostage to their own fear. Min Jeong's tragedy wasn't just the consequence of Kim's brutal behavior, but also the price paid for lack of initiative and effectiveness in law enforcement. After the program aired, pressure from public opinion hit like a storm. Kim went from being a free person to becoming the focus of society's rage. Even more concerning was when the public began digging into his past, dark secrets gradually being exposed. The shocking truth was that back in 2019, 5 years before the Min Jeong incident occurred, he had been fined $2,001,500 for intentionally distributing private videos of an ex-girlfriend online. This showed Kim had a long history of controlling and taking revenge on girlfriends, making them victims of his pathology. The enormous public pressure finally forced police to act. They decided to reopen the investigation with a more serious approach. After gathering sufficient evidence about Kim's stalking, harassment, and threatening behavior, prosecutors issued an arrest warrant with charges of serious criminal circumstances and suspicion of flight risk. In March 2024, 3 months after Min Jeong's death, Kim was finally arrested and detained. Prosecutors determined Kim's behavior wasn't isolated incidents, but a continuous and systematic series of crimes. They emphasized that before Min Jeong's death, the level of psychological control Kim imposed on her had become increasingly serious and pathological. This brutal control directly led to the final tragedy. Particularly, prosecutors pointed out that Kim had a history of repeat offenses with multiple violent acts against women, showing dangerous nature and high probability of reoffending. Based on these factors, they recommended a 10-year prison sentence. 4 months after Min Jeong's death, the official trial opened at Busan District Court. Kim faced multiple serious charges: special threats, stalking and harassment, and property destruction. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense as Min Jeong's aunt stepped up to testify. With a voice trembling from emotion, she shared that until this trial, the family still hadn't received even a single apology from Kim. Instead, he firmly denied all guilt and continuously tried to justify his behavior. This attitude not only showed lack of remorse, but made the victim's family's pain even deeper. Testimony from Min Jeong's friends further clarified the dark picture of this relationship. A close friend revealed he had often noticed bruises on Min Jeong's body. More notably, even during fun outings with friends, Min Jeong couldn't escape the control. She constantly had to check her phone, answer calls, or send messages, as if always living in fear of Kim's reactions. These details painted a clear picture of how Kim had controlled and abused Min Jeong for a long time. The defense lawyer presented a completely different viewpoint, claiming that due to malicious media coverage, the defendant had to endure fierce and unfair criticism from public opinion. According to this argument, Kim's life had been severely destroyed by biased reports. Particularly, the lawyer tried to create doubt about the direct connection between Kim's behavior and Min Jeong's death. He emphasized that although the unfortunate tragedy had occurred, there was no legal evidence proving Kim directly caused this outcome. One of the defense's most controversial arguments was victim blaming. The lawyer argued that Min Jeong had an inconsistent attitude toward breaking up, sometimes wanting to break up, sometimes seeming hesitant. According to this view, even after the official breakup, Min Jeong didn't show a clear enough rejection, which inadvertently created hope for Kim and led to continuous harassment. Regarding the incident on the fateful night, the defense lawyer declared Kim didn't break in illegally, but had a prior appointment with Min Jeong. This was a shocking statement, as it completely contradicted what the victim's family and friends knew. Regarding accusations about lack of apology, the lawyer offered a complex explanation. He said Kim had been advised by police not to directly contact the victim's family, and due to media pressure, Kim felt afraid. However, according to the lawyer, Kim and his father had sent apology letters through Min Jeong's family's lawyer, an indirect form of apology they claimed showed remorse under public pressure. Therefore, the defense lawyer argued for reducing Kim's sentence. Defendant Kim stated that for the rest of his life, he would always reflect and remember all those who suffered because of him. Notably, he declared sending his most sincere condolences to Min Jeong's case, but still couldn't express an apology, instead bowing to apologize to the judge. The judge found Kim's behavior improper. In today's social context where violence in romantic relationships is increasingly condemned, warning society through punishment was an urgent matter. Regarding the defense's argument that Min Jeong didn't clearly refuse, the judge criticized this. It was clear that Min Jeong didn't want Kim's continuous harassment, but under the influence of her kind and communicative personality, she gave incorrect responses. But the judge also stated that although Kim was always suspected of being related to Min Jeong's death and had received multifaceted investigation, it was always difficult to clearly prove a direct relationship between the two sides. Additionally, considering Kim had paid $30,122,500 in bail to the court, and as a new graduate entering society, the court would carefully determine the sentence based on principles of responsibility. After 2 months of tense trial, the court finally delivered its verdict on a summer day in 2024. Kim was convicted on multiple charges and received a sentence of 3 years and 6 months in prison. Additionally, the court required him to complete 40 hours of psychological treatment courses to help correct behavior and misconceptions and prevent reoffending. However, this verdict satisfied no one. Min Jeong's family felt deeply disappointed with the sentence given. In their statement, they expressed concern that the court hadn't truly recognized the seriousness of violence in romantic relationships. According to their view, such a light sentence couldn't create a deterrent effect and might not prevent similar tragedies in the future. Prosecutors also expressed dissatisfaction with the verdict, believing the sentence didn't properly reflect the crime's seriousness. Public opinion was divided into multiple streams, but most felt justice hadn't been served satisfactorily. Surprisingly, even Kim didn't accept this result. He and his defense lawyer believed the 3 years and 6 month sentence was too harsh and unfair. As a result, both sides, the victim's family and the defendant, decided to appeal. 4 months later, in November 2024, the appellate hearing opened at Busan District Court. This time, the judge had a different view of the case. They acknowledged that Kim had admitted to most of the criminal acts, and more importantly, before the appellate hearing took place, he had submitted a compensation request for Min Jeong's family while expressing apology and remorse. The judge considered these actions positive efforts to compensate the victim's family and show sincere repentance. Based on these mitigating factors, the appellate court concluded the original sentence was somewhat heavy. As a result, Kim received an additional 4-month reduction, with the final sentence being only 3 years and 2 months. This decision once again caused strong reactions from Min Jeong's family and public opinion, as they felt justice was even further away. What do you think about the final verdict for Kim Dao-hwan? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following along and see you in the next videos.